Everyone, it is now 6 p.m. on March 9th, and I'll call our town council meeting to order. If we could please take a moment of silence to reflect on all those that currently serve and have served in the past, enabling us a healthier, safer lifestyle. Thank you all. In accordance with Mass General Law, tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. If anyone in our audience is recording, could you please identify yourself? It looks like hearing or seeing none. Tonight's meeting is being held virtually via a Zoom webinar pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. That being said, Jeannie, anyone signed up for public comments?
No, they have not.
Okay. How about council comments? You know, we'll have plenty of them later down the agenda. Mary, how about manager's report? And she's
still
muted.
There.
There you go. Thank you, Mike. My report tonight will attempt to bring you up to date on what we've been doing since we last met a month ago, and pretty much summarize it in one sentence, and that is that we've been working on budget preparation. I have to give a lot of praise to my capital committee that's working under severe time constraints, as well as all the department heads who, in their usual way of cooperation, made their budget submissions and tried to maintain level funding on pretty much every line item that was possible to do that. So Steve and I have reviewed those with the department heads, and hopefully we'll have a package ready very shortly. So that's been the bulk of attention and activity from my office. I did yesterday began the employment of a new administrative assistant for the town manager. The woman's name is Deborah House. So I'm hoping that she'll acclimate quickly. I think she will. And that should assist on a lot of the ongoing projects that we have, make life a little bit easier. Other than budget matters, the vaccination clinics and the COVID management, if you will, has been also, of course, very a high priority on our top of mind list. As you know, the vaccine administration clinics by local boards of health were conducted for a brief time in East Longmeadow very successfully due to terrific effort on behalf of Amy Petrosky and Chief Morissette, as well as the paramedic personnel of the fire department. And I think the public that was able to take advantage of that was well served. We did have a bit of debate. I think Senator Lesser is going to be in the audience tonight to address you, but I want to give him a little bit of thanks publicly, because he was quite receptive to the time and the complaints that we expressed in frustration, really, about the governor's decision to go with mass vaccination sites as opposed to the local ones. I sent the council a copy of Secretary Sutter's correspondence a couple of weeks ago, indicating the decision that no more local boards would be allowed to distribute vaccines unless they could meet a 750 dose threshold daily. And we were unable to meet that threshold, and were unable to combine with other communities in order to make that happen. So it's disappointing and frustrating, because we were doing really such very good work for our seniors, and Senator Lesser was quite receptive to the complaints and understanding, and I know he used some of our verbiage in the COVID committee meetings that are held in Boston on this subject. Last Friday, the 26th, I guess that was a week ago Friday, was Elaine Grimaldi's last day as an employee of the town. She hot-footed it to Florida on the very next morning, I think. And God willing, she and her husband arrived there safely, and they'll spend March down there. I can't thank her enough for the good work that she did to restore policies and procedures and basically rebuild a human resources department for the town of East Longmeadow. She was only with us for 15 months, give or take. But as I say in my report, her graceful demeanor, her kindness to everyone, her patience, and her professional competence is really, I told her in my thank you card to her as her going away present that she was an inspiration to me and to many others. I know she served as a role model. So we're very sorry to lose her, but wish her extreme happiness and peace in her retirement. Meanwhile, Joan Iwanicki, not to disparage or diminish Joan, started with us on February 1st, so she had a month overlap with Elaine's tutoring. And she has also acclimated quite well. She's immersed herself in learning about the various outstanding union contracts and other issues that are pending on the labor side of things, and meeting the various department heads and other town staff. So I'm very happy with Joan's contributions to date. The Master Plan Steering Committee continues its work. The ultimate deliverable on that plan grant is June, so we're working towards that goal line. As many of you know, and some of you participated, I think, in the visioning session that the consultant scheduled for February 13th, a couple Saturdays ago. It was a 2-hour session that was extremely helpful, I think, in highlighting what the residents in the community feel is are the important strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities as they see them for the town's progress and future. As a result, as a matter of fact, as I put in my report, as a result of that visioning session, the Crushell family has reached out and said that they were inspired by watching that or participating in that Zoom meeting. And Erin Crushell and her kids are in the process of working now with Bruce Fenney and Donna Prather on putting together a community-wide Earth Day celebration and cleanup. So you never know what activity you schedule and how it may impact somebody or inspire somebody else. So we're very happy that we have the Crucials in town and that they're willing to put forth their efforts to make a cleaner and better community. Just got an email tonight from Erin just before this meeting where she has gotten the design for the t-shirts that she expects to have for sale as a token of appreciation for people who are going to participate in that Earth Day initiative. As usual, LCAT has a number of initiatives underway, one of which is not really an initiative, it's an obligation that Don Mackey and I have been working on with the Broadband Committee over the recent months, and that's the review of the charter license agreement. We have modified the current agreement. We have sent it back to Charter for their review. And once we get the commentary back from Charter, then we'll be scheduling a public hearing on that in the not too distant future. Meanwhile, Don and Jamie are working together with many departments, as they always do, to create informative videos on a number of topics. They work with the COA on their monthly A Pleasant View, as well as with the planning board. Russ Denver had the idea that perhaps an educational video would be helpful with respect to some zoning and permitting issues. So I know he's working on that through Bethany with Don and Jamie. And as they did last year, I know Jamie is doing the live streaming of some sporting events so that the extended families of our students can at least virtually participate and observe their family members while they're participating in their sporting activities. And the side benefit to that is that Jamie gets an opportunity to do a little mentoring of her own with some of the student broadcasters who are working with her on those streams. So it's another great activity that LCAT is putting together for the benefit of the community at large. We have submitted the town report to a graphic, the 2020 town report. It should be done in a more timely fashion than last year's. It's out at the graphic designer. And once whatever edits are suggested come back to us, then it can go to the printer and should be available shortly. Other departments, of course, I can go on. We haven't had a monthly department meeting since the end of January, but everyone continues to work hard. I reference in my report Recreation, COA, and the library in particular, who are all reaching out as best they can to their respective populations to keep them informed of activities that are still going on despite the COVID pallor. And all of the department heads continue to work hard each day to carry out the town's business. And I want to repeat for the record, at least, that I feel so strongly about this, that the collective goodwill and cooperation of the department heads is evident each and every single day and is a tremendous credit to the town of East Longmeadow. Last week, the Board of Directors of Westcom met again to review requests for qualification submittals that were made by architects for the design, a redesign and redevelopment of the Salter College building. I guess I'm going to have to stop calling it that. It's the old Salter College on Schwinnigan Drive in Chicopee that was recently purchased by Westcom to serve as the regional emergency response center. So that board meeting, the 4 board members, myself, town manager in Longmeadow, the mayor's representative in Chicopee, and the new town administrator interim town administrator in Munson, had to review those requests, those submissions, and rate them. And we chose, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Kessel Booz Associates of Foxborough. Incidentally, for Jennifer Wolowitz, who was one of the candidates for this job that I currently hold, has recently been appointed as the interim in Munson. Evan Broussard, the longtime town administrator there, has moved on to the town of Grafton recently. And lastly, I just want to at least briefly mention the audit of the Hampden County Retirement Board and that investigation. I don't want to comment on it because it's in the hands of the Inspector General, the Attorney General, and the Ethics Commission in Massachusetts, all of which have some measure of power to rectify some of these wrongs. I will say that what appears to be the egregious mistakes and perhaps some misuse of funds by the board do not impact the retirement contributions, which are in the hands of a third-party investment. They're more personal conduct of the board members, which raises an eyebrow with respect to the propriety of those expenses. Some of them have already been corrected. Some have been reimbursed. Some people have resigned. And it will be an ongoing investigation. And as more information is available that can be shared publicly, I'll certainly do that. So that's it for me for now.
Well, thank you for the report, Mary. Lots of good information. And that being said, I'll entertain a motion to accept our open session minutes from our February 9th meeting.
I'll make a motion to accept the open session minutes for 9th meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Bless you.
Bless you. Hearing and seeing none, we'll roll call vote this. Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Kathy?
Yes.
Mom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yeah.
Ralph's muted, but sign language there, I'll count that as a yes.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you, Ralph. Okay, under communications, correspondence, and announcements, I did look over and we have Senator Lesser in the audience. And if we could have Jamie convert him into a panelist, we'll welcome him to join our meeting. So. Good evening, Senator.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Loud
Yes.
and clear.
Good evening.
Can everybody see me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm sure on behalf of this council, all of us are anxious for any information you can provide us with. The state, everything that's going on, it's obviously presents itself as quite a moving target, and we realize things change day by day, but we're all getting asked quite a few questions regarding many different subject matters. So again, we're excited to have you here, and whatever you can provide us with, I'm sure will be very helpful. So thank you.
Oh, well, Mr. Chair, I'm shocked to hear that because it's just been such a quiet time. There's nothing happening and there's no news. First, I have some formal things, of course, to present, but just a moment of sort of personal indulgence for a second. I was driving home today from the State House. We had a hearing that I'll get into on the state budget, but the person on the radio was talking about BC, before COVID, and she was talking and taking callers of people saying what the last thing they did was before COVID hit, a year ago, and everything changed. And I was realizing, and Joel and I were laughing about this, but I think the last public event I did before the shutdowns and before everything that came in March of 2020 was appear before the East Longmeadow Town Council. So that'll forever be ingrained in my memory as one of the last things I did. So on a serious note, I just want to thank each of you so much. And I want to thank the town. I know it's been a very, very hard year. That's an understatement to say that, but I've just really been very proud to represent East Longmeadow the last year. I'm always proud to represent East Longmeadow, but just the way the town has come together and just frankly, the quality and the caliber of your team, all of you, your first responders, the clinic, which I'm sure we'll get into and talk about, and just the way the community has responded to all of this over the last year. I feel very proud to represent a community like that. So thank you. And we're certainly going to stay focused on what we need to do to get everybody back to normal. So just a couple quick things, and then I assume, Mr. Chair, that there'll be a lot of questions, so I'll stay as long as everybody wants to answer questions. But I wanted to give everyone a quick update on the state budget because I know the town administrator has mentioned in the opening the budgeting process underway with the town. So knock on wood, the revenue numbers that have been coming in for the state astonishingly have been very, very positive. And this is another just element of this fast moving situation that I think is welcome news, but we're being cautious about it because it is month to month and there's so much that's unstable about the numbers. But the February numbers, for example, that came in for state revenue were far above even the best case scenario, and were far above what even 2019 was. So that's a good sign. That combined with the federal stimulus money that the state of Massachusetts is going to be getting hopefully soon. The ink will hopefully be dry on that in Washington very, very soon. Those two pieces combined, I think, are going to give us a better budget than I think certainly the worst case scenarios, and frankly, probably better than even some of the more rosy scenarios were even just a few months ago. So I don't want to overstate that, and I want to be cautious that it's a moving target. But for example, the Chapter 70 and the local aid allotments in the governor's proposal are largely level from previous years. I know there's some very modest increases for East Longmeadow when I looked through what the governor's H1 proposal was. But we're going to have a lot more information even just in the next few months. The House budget will be in April, Senate budget will be in May. We'll reconcile those two budgets in June and get it reconciled with the governor by July 1. We're all, I think, committed this year to following that traditional timeline. So that's also good news. But I do think, I'm hoping that we're going to have some good news as the month we move, as we get more revenue in the door month to month. So I'm hoping that those numbers can tick up a little bit. And then I know that there's a lot else related to the economy and the reopening that we can get into maybe in the Q&A. Before I kind of switch over to just quickly talking about vaccines, I do want to just give everyone the heads up that a very important piece of relief that is going to be relevant, not as much for the town government per se, but certainly for our residents and for our businesses, is going to be a big relief, which is we have committed to an agreement. We actually announced this yesterday between the governor, the House, and the Senate to freeze UI rate payments for small businesses. They were going to be faced with as much as a 60% hit on UI rates for per employee assessments. This would actually have affected a lot of the small businesses in East Longmeadow. Many wrote to me, so I know East Longmeadow in particular was going to be very hard hit by this. That, I think, is in a good place. We're going to be freezing. We're doing some borrowing and some other work behind the scenes to kind of allow that freeze to happen, but we're going to be freezing the UI rates. And very importantly, we've announced an intention to make the PPP loans tax-free for Massachusetts income tax. There was going to be a very unfair dynamic at play because incorporated businesses that were set up to pay state corporate taxes were automatically excluded based on how we link to federal tax policy. That was not going to be the case for businesses that pay through personal income taxes. So S corps, not to get into all this, but there's a large number of businesses, especially small businesses, service-oriented businesses, are set up that way. They were going to be facing a 5% penalty essentially on the PPP loans they got to survive the pandemic, and that hopefully is not going to happen. It's not done, but a press release did go out with the various players yesterday, so I just wanted to address that because we were dealing with that today. And then finally, on the vaccines, I'm a member of the new COVID-19 oversight panel that was appointed by the Speaker and the Senate President. I'm one of the Senate members. We're very fortunate that the Senate Chair is our neighbor, Jo Comerford from Northampton. Her and I have been very synced up on this for the last several weeks. People may have seen we had the governor personally appear at the committee about 2 weeks ago. It was intense, to say the least, and we also had Secretary Sutters appear, but there were very important questions and an important dialogue there, and we've learned a lot from that hearing about what the state was doing right and some places where the state was not doing the right thing. So we are going to be having another hearing, and I'll keep everybody updated, but I do want to thank East Longmeadow because Mary and I did have a conversation, and I've been corresponding with the fire chief, about the situation with the East Longmeadow Clinic. I personally think it's unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable, that vaccine doses were being pulled from our local boards of health and being sent to other places. I thought it was unacceptable that the vaccine doses were being pulled from our local hospitals who know our communities the best and were being redirected to these centralized sites that may or may not have been close to our communities. So that is in the process of being fixed, and they did hear that loud and clear from us. when we made that case, and there is now more availability. The doses have been brought back to Bay State and to Mercy, for example. We're still working on getting local boards of health clinics reopened, although Springfield will have it, as will a regional partnership in Northampton. So we're getting there. But I just want to thank all of you for really reaching out to me about this. Don't be shy, because it's helpful to me in the advocacy when we have the detail and we have the the details about what's happening and what's working and what's not. So there's so many more topics. I mean, the schools, there's a lot to get into, but I do want to make sure that I take questions, and we'll just have a dialogue. And if there's anything I've left out, just bring it up and we'll go in. But I want to just, again, close, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, by saying, just how grateful I am to each of you and to the town. Everybody has really been through a lot, but I really do think we're hopefully now turning a corner, and we just got to get the vaccines out, and we got to be noisy, frankly, about making sure that Western Mass is getting its due in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I guess we'll work our way around the room. Marilyn, do you have any questions for the senator?
Thank you, Michael. Hi, Senator Lesser.
How are you?
I have a question. Last year, just before COVID hit, one of the hot topics was crumbling foundations. And I'm getting a sense that there is still some effort moving towards some relief for these folks who are going to have to do some huge projects on their foundations. Is that true?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up, because it's a very, very important issue, in particular for East Longmeadow. I have multiple communities where this is a very significant concern. So we do have some cautiously good news on that front, in the sense that my colleague Ann Goby, so I mentioned Joe Comerford just to our north in Northampton. We have Ann Goby, who has Palmer, right across the Wilbraham line and east. She has put together really comprehensive legislation based off of, if you remember, we got legislation for a commission, that did a pretty thorough finding of, both surveying what had happened in Connecticut and the solutions in Connecticut, and also trying to get our hands around the scope of the problem here. In addition to the commission getting set up, we stood up the testing program where homeowners could get reimbursement for doing the pyrite core testing, which has, again, given us some sense of the potential scale, because we were really encouraging people to get their foundations tested so that we would know the degree of the problem. The next phase here will be this legislation that I'm a co-sponsor of with Senator Goby, getting that passed so that we can begin to create some sort of reimbursement process. The closest model we have is Connecticut, which set up a self-insurance entity, and then they used state resources and state bonding capacity to basically reinsure it's complicated, but they reinsured the homes, and then the homes drew off of those funds to fix the foundations. It was a long and messy process, frankly, and a lot of issues, but they have, for the most part, resolved it at this point in Connecticut. So that's our kind of rough roadmap. And so I think the next step here is we've got to get Senator Goby's legislation passed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I'll just say, there's things in life that I can control. Maybe there's a lot of things I can't control. Like, unfortunately, the crumbling concrete is something we can't control what happened, in the sense that, something deeply unfair to people. Let's just be honest. A deeply unfair and wrong situation, that it was not people's fault. They discovered this chemical in the concrete, and the company that did it has disappeared, and has been gone for a long time. But what we can control is how hard we work in doing our best to make it right. So, and I've heard from the families, it's a pretty horrific thing. I think all of us who are homeowners, the idea of one day waking up and finding out that your most important asset, your most important investment, has evaporated is not pleasant. So it's not lost on me how devastating it is for the families.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mike, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Good evening. Chapter 90 funding. Has
Yes.
the federal government kicked in any additional or anything? I mean, is it looking like level or a boost to it? We got plenty of roads that need some work.
Yeah. I mean, the infrastructure enthusiast in me, and also the kind of economic the kind of Keynesian in me says we should be boosting Chapter 90 a lot because it's going to put a lot of people to work, and it's a great way to invest money in local communities that really need it right now. The Chapter 90 money or the budget that we're working with off Chapter 90 right now is roughly level. Although we might have an update for you on that, and it might be, that's a good point about the federal aid, because we might have more space in the state budget now, given the clarity we're getting on what the aid package from Washington is going to look like. There was actually a Chapter 90 hearing today at the State House. It was remote, but I wasn't able to participate because we were cross-scheduled with this other Ways and Means hearing. But once I get a readout on what we learned from that Chapter 90 hearing today, we can get you more information on that.
That'd be great. One other follow-up question. I know it's right to your heart, the east-west rail trail, as far as high speed into
Oh, you would
Boston.
never ask. Yeah. No.
How are we doing with that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, obviously there was a little bit of a delay with COVID. I mean, people were distracted, but we've had actually a lot of very good news. So thank you for asking about this. So first, we finished the study. So MassDOT completed its study. The study was frankly a little bit of a mixed bag. There was a lot that MassDOT left out. And it was sort of head scratching to me that after 2.5 years and more than $1 million that they spent on the study, and the consistent feedback, not just myself, but many legislators and other leaders were giving them about the things that they needed to look at. For example, they did no environmental analysis of how many cars it would take off the road and how it would impact air quality. They didn't do what's called an induced demand analysis, which is determining what the economic impact would be and how development and population changes with the rail, right? That's the whole point.
Right.
Of having the rail. So there were some gaps. They identified that, but we have now, for the first time ever, a real blueprint for how to make rail happen. And we have a set of recommendations for various versions of service that would create, as many as 11 to 12 train trips a day between Springfield and Boston. And I'm excited about it because it's happening at a very important moment with everything else. So we were able to get a $50 million bond authorization in the transportation bond bill with the same bill that we also included for the Coughlin's interchange. I know there was a few $1 million in that to help with that, but we got a $50 million authorization to do site prep and preparatory work for the East-West rail line. At the same time, we have a lot of momentum federally, and I want to thank Congressman Neal and Senators Warren and Markey, who have made this a very big priority and have publicly said multiple times that the next major package in Washington after this COVID aid package is done is going to be a major infrastructure bill. And Pete Buttigieg, who's the new Secretary of Transportation, is someone I've known for 17 years. We've worked together in the past, and he knows about the project because I've talked to him about the project a lot over the years, and he kind of appreciates the role this can play because he was the mayor of South Bend when they did significant improvements in the Chicago South Bend link. Right. So that's a lot. I apologize for kind of going on, but I wanted to give people the context here, which is that we had a frankly kind of mixed bag with the MassDOT report, but we have a lot of big things that have happened around that are giving a lot of momentum to the project, really more momentum than I've ever seen in the 6 years I've been working on it.
That's good news. Thank you.
Don, I saw your hand up previously.
Senator Lesser, always a pleasure. Thank you.
How are you, Don? Yeah, Counselor.
Thanks. Following up on Counselor Richard's comments on the concrete, here's a thought, because the message did get out to a number of constituents about the testing, which is both good and bad. constituent reached out, found a small presence in there, but there's really no damage, no risk in any imminent situation of the foundation crime. So, but because of the mere presence, was able to get a small discount on their real estate taxes based on the program we have. However, conversely, was not able to get any type of opportunity to refinance a higher interest loan. It can even be a non-cash out refinance. And I tried to work with a local credit union. I tried to work with one of our local banks. Merely word scared them off. So I had a thought, perhaps we can the good works of mass housing and put good parameters in place to protect the state, but be able to verifiable structural engineer report in addition to an appraisal and so forth, and afford our residents who are getting advantage of the testing and have a solid foundation, but for that presence, and be able to refinance. So there's a thought out there.
No, I think that's a great idea. I mean, we should be chasing all of these options, right? So yeah, we can maybe follow up, offline on it, Don. But what I will say is, people were stuck in this kind of sort of Kafka-esque or Dadaist or whatever kind of metaphor or comparison you want to give to it of, most people, it costs, I think, at a minimum $200,000 to do the project of excavating the foundation. You have to put the house on stilts. You then have to pull the concrete out. Then you re-pour a foundation. Then you put the house back down. So obviously, most people don't have that sitting around in their pockets. So what do? You go to a bank. Well, the asset most people would have to borrow against would be the house. And then the bank was telling people that they couldn't use their house as collateral because the house had no value because it had pyrite in its foundation. So it's been a failure across the board. And frankly, the insurance companies, homeowners insurance, the homeowners insurance companies added these riders to people's policies, that said that they only covered full collapse, not partial collapse, meaning you had to wait for the house to fall in on itself before you could use homeowners insurance. I could go on and on about, about what people have been put through, but you're right. Somehow using the state or creating a public, financial response and or being creative about how we do the financing has got to be part of the solution.
And in situations where there's no crumbling foundation, the foundation visually looks fine for these people.
Right.
Taking advantage of that reimbursement, we found out there is a presence there. And, getting a structural engineer. So, I mean, the foundation will probably last over a century, if not more.
Right.
But because it has the P word in there, it sours even legitimate lenders trying to give the loan out to the people.
And some of that has got to be knowledge leveling too, right? We need to work with the schools, with people with expertise who can really certify and explain to those lenders, this is a token amount, or this is not actually dangerous, and walking people through the science of that so that they can have some peace of mind. That's absolutely right. Because there's panic also. That as you got to balance the concern for the safety with the engineering analysis of what's dangerous and what isn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, I saw your hand up earlier.
Yeah, Senator Lesser, I just have a follow-up question regarding the vaccinations. Our town was very fortunate to receive the first dose of vaccines, and several hundred of them have been issued to our residents. Will we be guaranteed from the state enough vaccines to follow up with our residents for their second shot?
So all I can kind of translate to you is what the Baker administration has told us, and the secretary of HHS, Mary Lou Sutters, who's this COVID, commander or the COVID incident response coordinator, has repeatedly told us that everyone who got a first dose, they will find and they will ensure a timely second dose. That has not been everybody's experience, to be frank. And we've had situations across the state that our committee has been involved with and has been working on where second doses were not secured in a timely way. But what I will say is, I do think that they will be able to do it. We've certainly put them on notice, and we can kind of work offline, or I can work with Mary to just make sure that communication is happening with the relevant folks at HHS and with the governor's incident team, so that they're planning for that, because they have repeatedly told us and told the legislature that they have accounted for and they will ensure that first dose, that second dose appointments are done in a timely way. Now, it might not be exactly 3 weeks. The medical advice is a little bit broader than it's not necessarily 3 weeks on the nose, but they've assured us that it will be medically appropriate, follow up for the second dose. So, but we need to stay on top of it, because not to start going about vaccines, but the vaccines are coming in two different ways. They're coming and they're being delivered from the federal government directly to retail pharmacies through a federal pharmacy program, and the state is not really directly involved in that. They're being shipped directly to CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart, Big Y, directly from the vaccine manufacturers. The second way that most people are accessing the vaccines is the doses being sent to the states and then are being distributed via the state governors through the state departments of public health. And that's how they end up in East Long Meadow, or they end up at the first responder clinic. It's through a distribution mechanism through the Department of Public Health. And that's where we've had issues, and there's been confusion. So we just need to stay on top of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the senator? I just have one quick question myself here. We talked about the uptick in revenue streams, and I'm sure we all realize that meals tax has been very flat, to say the least. So where's the uptick basically coming from?
It's such a good question, and just it's just a fascinating kind of breakdown. So as you would expect, meal and occupancy taxes are very far down. Although, Massachusetts is fortunate in the sense that we do have a very diverse economy, and we have a very diverse set of revenue streams. So meal and occupancy taxes are down. Capital gains are way up because of the stock market increases. Income taxes are slightly up as well, which is fascinating, despite the layoffs, the mass layoffs that we've had and the very high unemployment rate. The $600 CARES Act, $600 per week supplement was taxable. Now that's controversial that taxes were applied to those, what was meant to be emergency aid, for unemployed workers, but that created a big boost. And then because our income tax skews towards wealthier and higher earning, residents, a lot of those folks have done okay, and I think this is an example of a very sort of split economic recovery we've seen, not just in Massachusetts but nationwide. We've seen devastating job losses and unemployment, especially among service workers, healthcare sector, restaurants, travel, hospitality. At the same time, a lot of our quote unquote kind of professional or knowledge workers, in law and finance and in healthcare and biotech, have seen in some cases record years, and have been able to work by Zoom and have been able to work through their laptop. So The result has for Massachusetts been, at least for now, and we've received significant one-time federal aid, both from the CARES Act and multiple rounds of federal stimulus, including the latest one that's about to happen. So all of that combined has meant that we have a more stable budget picture than I think a lot of us had predicted and a lot of experts had predicted when this started. But, just to give a sense of the suffering that's happening, I mean, I know all of us know this and we hear this from our constituents, but we had testimony today at a hearing I was chairing at the State House with the State Labor Secretary. She briefed us on, and I'm on the Mass Hire, the Mass Hire Workforce Training Board as well, where we heard similar numbers, but she's estimating 250,000 jobs that have been lost will be lost permanently. They're never coming back in the state. I mean, that's 250,000 people. So when we just think about the human toll this has taken and the scarring that's creating for our families and for our economy, I think it's just something that we have to keep at the front of our response at all times. And I would point out one of the other striking findings, and we're seeing more and more of this the more that the data is analyzed. The overwhelming share of those job losses have been among women, and in particular women of color. And part of this is because of the sectors that have been the most impacted: early childhood, education sectors, again, hospitality, service work. These are predominantly female, fields that have disproportionate share female and disproportionately women of color in particular. And so our policy response, I think needs to keep that in mind.
Well, thank you. At least the numbers are moving in the right direction, revenue-wise and COVID-wise. And we all want to thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I know how passionate you are about East Long Meadow, so hopefully between yourself and Joel, maybe we can plan on seeing you again, maybe 90 days down the road, and
absolutely
further updates. So
no, I welcome. On a serious note, I'll come back anytime. So just let me know. Let's put it this way. I'm relieved that we're in March 2021, not March 2020. I do think we're as tough as the year has been, and certainly don't want to, minimize that. I do think we're turning a corner, and I think now we're just looking at positives. Things reopening, vaccines coming out, schools reopening. I mean, I just think about how all of us, the mental place we were in March and April and May of last year. It is a big difference. So it's important to stay optimistic.
Yes. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll, like I said, we'll catch up maybe 90 days sometime in June. We'll look forward to seeing you again. So
sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Still under communications and correspondence. Jeannie, do you have an update for us regarding the election papers, nomination papers?
Sure. We were fortunate to have a light election year this year compared to 2020. We have a local election on June 8th and a possible preliminary on May 4th. February 4th was the day that people could take out nomination papers for 2 available seats on the town council and 1 available seat on the school committee. And as of today, we've had 2 candidates return papers on town council and 2 return papers on school committee, which does not deem a preliminary yet. So people have till March 16 to return papers, and people still have time to take out papers and get them back to us by March 16, at which point we'll know if we'll have a preliminary or not. So if you do want to take out nomination papers, just contact our office and we'll make an appointment to meet you outside the town hall and do that for you.
All right. Thanks, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're well inside the time parameters for our public hearing this evening that was scheduled for 6 p.m. If I can just briefly touch on the protocol here. The reason for this public hearing is to approve a proposed transfer of license from GMRC Incorporated, doing business as Figueres, located at 641 North Main Street, to Barrera Inc. DBA, Tortito Mexican Restaurant. So we can formally open this public hearing, and I'll introduce the council members. Up in my left corner of the screen is Marilyn Richards. I'm Mike Kane. We have Kathy Hill to my right. Next screen down, Tom O'Connor, followed by Don Anderson, Pat Henry, and Ralph Page. Jeannie, could you please read the legal notice into the record?
Sure. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws that Barrera Inc., DBA Torito Mexican Restaurant has applied for a liquor license transfer of an all alcohol beverages on premises license currently held by GMRC Inc., DBA Fugera, 621 North Main Street, East Longmeadow, Massachusetts, to Barrera Inc., DBA Torito Mexican Restaurant. The Town Council will hold a public hearing on the application on Tuesday, March 9, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom webinar. For the council, Jean R. Quaglietti, Town Clerk, Clerk of the Council.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Welcome.
Jackie, if the applicant is in the audience there, could we please bring him or her in?
Do you know the name? Sorry.
The attorney's name, I imagine would be the attorney, Jeannie?
It would be Mr. Oppenheim.
Okay.
Mike, I just want to point out on our agenda, we listed this as 641 North Main Street.
Uh-huh.
It's actually 621, so our agenda was wrong. Jeannie read it correctly, and it was advertised correctly.
All right, thank you for that. I'll make a note on the document here. And looks like Jeffrey's almost here. Okay.
There he is.
Evening, Mr. President.
Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm fine. My name is Jeff Oppenheim. I'm an attorney in Falmouth, Massachusetts, on the other end of the state from you. I bring you greetings from Barrera Inc. I'd like to introduce my clients to the council first, and then take you through our presentation quickly.
Good.
Our president and director is Miguel Ramos. And last year when we were before you, he was actually sitting with me in your hearing room. His brother, Jorge Ramos, is our treasurer, secretary, and also a director. He was not able to be with us last year because he was opening a restaurant in New York. We have two new shareholders, Ramon Michel Sr. and Ramon Michel, his son, Jr., and they're both directors. Ramon Michel Jr. will be acting as our manager under the application that we have filed with the town council. I believe that Dan Kelly may also be certainly listening in. He represents our landlord, Manuel and Georgette Coelho, the owners of Fugeria. Also, Brendan Greeley, who's a commercial real estate broker who has been assisting the parties in this transaction. I believe he may also be listening in. A little bit of procedural background. As the clerk mentioned, we're requesting the transfer of a license from GMRC Inc. Of the existing on-premises all alcohol beverage license. This is a Section 12 license. Last year on February 11th, 2020, I was before the board. We had a public hearing on this transfer request, and you may recall that the council granted on February 25th of 2020 a liquor license subject to approval by your planning board of a special permit for the new restaurant at this location. Soon after we were before the council, as all of you know, the floor dropped out from under us. A worldwide pandemic hit, and the result of that to our corporation was that we lost some of our investors. We lost the gentleman who was going to be our manager. So that's the real reason we're before you again 13 months later, because we've had a change in our corporate structure, and the manager that will be hopefully running our restaurant, subject to your approval. So as you well know, the whole restaurant industry went through real trauma. And I'm happy to say that my clients have managed to hold on to all of their restaurants. They've had to work very hard. They've changed, to more takeout, et cetera. The special legislation to assist restaurants in having outdoor dining. All of that has helped to make their restaurants survive here in Massachusetts. On Cape Cod, I think we've lost already about 1/3 of our restaurants, to give you some sense of the economic impact to this sector of the economy. So our clients had to go through some painful rethinking of this project. It went from the purchase of that property that we had intended to use as a restaurant to a lease. And again, we had to get some new investors and a new manager to assist in this project. We did that, and by the end of the summer, we were back in the mix. I applied for that special permit that is required of the planning board, and we had a meeting with the planning board on November 10th of 2020. And in the course of that meeting, unfortunately, I learned of an agreement that town council and the planning board and building department had entered into with our landlord. And the chairman of the planning board said that although they would like to help us, it was imperative that we come back to the town council to discuss that agreement and hopefully have the town council determine that it is no longer applicable because of this potential new tenancy. So I think we can take that up with your permission after I make the presentation on the actual request for transfer of liquor license. So a little bit more background on the principals. Miguel Ramos and his wife, Maria, have interest in 10 Mexican restaurants. He has a few in New York, in Ulster, Poughkeepsie, Red Hook, and Wappinger Falls. He owns a part interest with family in Hampden, Connecticut, Northborough, Mass, Falmouth, which is how I met him, and Saugus, Brockton, and hopefully soon in your community of East Longmeadow. Miguel and his wife have worked since 1995, 26 years in the restaurant business. He works very closely with his brother, Jorge, who is his business partner and has 17 years of experience. And Jorge is the one that has been tasked with finding suitable new locations for restaurants and helping to develop new enterprises. He lives in Grafton, Massachusetts with his family. Now I've represented both Miguel and Jorge and their corporations since the spring of 2015, when they were doing their permitting here in Falmouth. And these gentlemen have acquired 7 restaurants successfully in the last 6 years. Now, the other family that's involved in this enterprise, I haven't known as long, but they have very deep experience as well. Ramon Michel has in his past, had 30 years of experience in the restaurant business. He owned 13 different restaurants in Indiana and 2 grocery stores there. He sold all of those and is now has 2 restaurants in Rhode Island, one in Warwick and one in South Kingston. Now his son, Ramon Michel Jr., has been working with his father and has learned the business from the ground up. Like most of my clients, most of them started in the, bussing tables or washing dishes, etc., and slowly worked their way up through to become owners. Ramon has been working for 8 years in restaurants, and the last 3 years he has had significant management responsibilities at both the family restaurants in Rhode Island. He works 6 days a week, 10 to 12-hour days. While under his management, he has not had any liquor violations in those 2 restaurants. He gets a lot of support from his dad, a lot of training. He's been TIP certified for the last 5 years, and he is our designated manager on our license application. Collectively, these clients have over 81 years of experience in the restaurant and bar business. They're first and second generation Mexican Americans. They're extremely hardworking, incredibly entrepreneurial, and extremely positive people. And I feel honored to be able to represent them before you this evening. Now, a bit about the proposed location. It's just under 10,000 square feet, this building. It's 9,995 square feet. It has a seating capacity of 261, which is a correction from our application, which I put 264. We've adjusted the seating downward as a result of our application for special permit. It has 88 parking spaces and 5,656 square feet on the main floor and 4,339 square feet in the lower banquet room. The first floor, we hope to have permits for 174 occupants, and the lower level, 87 occupants. The first floor presently has 2 bars. We're going to eliminate one of the bars, and the other bar will be improved and will seat 22 people. The bar in the basement will have 9 seats if we get your approval. There are ample public entrances and emergency egresses from this building, as you can see from the floor plan that I submitted with the application. I think we have 5 egresses and 2 main entrances, one of them being a handicapped entrance. The interior will be renovated, including the kitchens. The decorations will be colorful Mexican colors, which is typical of all their restaurants. The perimeter of the seating area on the first floor will be all booths and the interior will be, regular tables. The menu, which I gave you last year, has not changed. I didn't include it in this year's application, but you can see it online with any of the restaurants. And if you look at last year's application, you'll see it's a rather extensive Mexican menu. It's authentic Mexican food. I can tell you because I've eaten at several of the restaurants. The portions are generous. The food is good. And people leave frequently with, extra food for another meal. The basement banquet area, we see as a perfect area for hosting birthday parties, sport teams, and, special family dinners. I was in their Northborough restaurant on a Friday night once with my wife, and they had, several soccer teams with parents, dining in the restaurant, and it was a lot of noise, a lot of young people, but it was also very heartening to see. I've also been in restaurants. There are restaurants on Sunday afternoon where it's not unusual for a lot of Mexican Americans to gather with their families after attending church. The kitchen will be open as long as the bar is open. That's part of our application. We're seeking hours of operation Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And again, a correction of my application. I said starting at 10 a.m. I made an error. We would be opening at 11 in the morning and closing at 10. On Friday and Saturday night, we're seeking hours of 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. My clients see their restaurant as largely a child and family friendly, restaurant. And that's really the crowd they want. The later in the evening it gets, the less the clientele is likely to be one that they want in their restaurant. So they're not seeking, unusual closing hours or opening hours. No alcohol beverages will be served unless a patron is seated in the restaurant, either at the bar or in the dining area. And again, the kitchen will be open and the full menu available as long as the bar is open. There will be no advertising on the premises of the service of alcoholic beverages, which will be visible from the outside of the restaurant. The manager, as I've already said, has tips training, and all the bartenders who will be working will have had the tips training. I can, if it's helpful to the council, I'd be happy to walk through the floor plan quickly, and then I will conclude. The floor plan, which I think is in your packet, looks a lot like this. It shows in the lower level tables for 78 patrons and 9 at the bar. There's also a kitchen down there and storage for the restaurant. On the first floor, which is of course the main floor, there will be seating for 22 people at the bar and 84 patrons in the front area of the restaurant, close to North Main Street, and 56 in the back area of the restaurant. There's an additional 12 occupants shown in booths directly opposite the bar on the street side of the property. So the total of patrons is a maximum of 261. So we would, of course, appreciate a second favorable vote from the council. We are, anxious to get our license, get our special permit, so we can get in, do the renovations in the building, and be in business in your community as soon as possible. It's been a long haul. It's, been over 13 months since I was last in front of you, and, we're not done yet. So we would appreciate action on this application as soon as possible. And I thank you all. I'm of course available to try to answer any questions you may have. And then at some point, with the permission of the president, I'd like to talk about this agreement, but perhaps we can do that after you've had a chance to ask questions about the actual application.
Okay, thank you for the proposal and all relevant information pertaining to the business model. First of all, I just want to apologize to Jackie and Jamie. Seeing Jackie's picture on the screen and not Jamie, I'm going back and forth with names here, so please try to bear with me. On that subject matter, at this point in time, we are going to open up this hearing for public input. So Jamie, I believe we might see participants in the crowd, and they can signify by raising their hands. If they raise their hands, could you kindly bring them into the meeting if you're seeing anyone? At this point in time, is there anyone in the audience that is looking to speak under the public portion of our hearing?
I don't see any right now.
Okay, thank you for that. We will move to council comments and information, and any questions based off the conversations that the attorney has just presented. Hopefully he can answer them and bring some light on the subject. So Marilyn, I see your hand up in the corner there, please.
Thank you, Mike. Attorney Oppenheim, you mentioned earlier that you had participated with your client and the planning board within the special permit process. When you got to the issue of the agreement, did things come to a screeching halt? Were they postponed? I mean, what's the status with the planning board with respect to this application?
Thank you for that question, Mrs. Richards. Yes, they did come to a screeching halt, but we have reapplied, and we are scheduled to have a public hearing before the planning board next Tuesday.
Okay.
So we're trying to move ahead, and that's sort of why, well, it is the reason for me to be, on some level, wanting to have hopefully a definitive discussion with the council about this agreement, which caused the planning board to take a position that they could not really even entertain making a decision until the council decided what to do with this 2018 agreement.
That begs the question, was there something that you were requesting within the special permit that was in opposition to the agreement?
Yes, we were requesting that we could use the decks for serving food and alcoholic beverage, which is what my request was 13 months ago of town council as well. There was a special permit in place as a result of the agreement entered into by our landlord and the town council and planning and building, I believe, as well. And that agreement, or that special permit, I should say, limited the use of the decks to smoking. 32 patrons smoking on the decks. So my client has told me that he is not interested, or they are not interested at this time in pursuing outdoor dining and beverage service on the decks. So that's why we're showing no seats on our site, on our floor plan for the decks. And we're going to go to the planning board and tell them the same.
Thank you.
But there still is this agreement out there that seems to be hanging over this property. And in fairness to my clients who are going to be, making an investment not only of money and time and their sweat equity, et cetera, that we understand what the community of East Longmeadow position is on that agreement. Is this going to be something that will follow the property or be extinguished because the operator at the property hopefully will be our clients under a 10-year lease?
Are we discussing the agreement now? I don't want to, be premature in a question regarding, with the agreement, which I just requested. I just got a copy of before this meeting tonight. And there are a number of issues that are addressed within the operation of a restaurant at this location. And the agreement is between the current property owner, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess I'm struggling with how to negate or discuss negating that agreement without looking at this in its entirety. The fact that the owner is not present to even weigh in on this. But anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm sure someone else has something to say.
So, I don't know that the owner is not listening in. I would expect that his counsel, Dan Kelly, is listening in. He certainly knows about the hearing and is sensitive to the fact that that agreement came as a shock to me last November, and also to him because he was unaware of it as well. And at least to the planning board, it seems to be a high hurdle that we got to get over before we can have, a meaningful hearing with them next week.
Thank you. Ralph, I saw your hand up earlier and you're muted. There you go.
You did. Do you want to hold off until we talk about the whole agreement, or is it okay if I go into a discussion on the agreement?
I think that the agreement is relevant to the entire process here tonight, so I don't have an issue with talking about the agreement. As everyone knows, this agreement surfaced later than sooner, and I know we might need some time to digest what's in that agreement to make sure the process is correct.
So with regards to the agreement, I've only been able to scan a few minutes here and there on it. If I remember correctly, this property used to be grandfathered in as a nightclub bar. And then through this agreement, I believe it was that the town council with an agreement said that this place can now only be a restaurant, that the grandfathering would no longer be relevant. To me, looking at it quickly, that's really what that agreement is saying, is that the grandfathering is no longer in effect. I would really like to see our town attorney confirm that for me, because I don't want to dissolve an agreement and then all of a sudden find out that the grandfathering, because it continued on, could now jump back up to us. I mean, that was the whole reason. I mean, I know I was on the planning board when I voted on a special permit. The town council appealed the decision and it went to court. And long story short, after court and all, that's where this agreement came from. By that time, I was off of the planning board and I hadn't yet come on to the council. So I'm a little concerned with just waiving this. I would like to see, if we go forwards, possibly the planning board issue a new special permit with set guidelines, what's included, what isn't included, and wipe everything out in the past. But until that's done, I honestly don't think that we should be voting on granting the liquor license, because typically a liquor license will be granted for the areas that the planning board allows service and all. And if we don't know where they're going to allow it, it's hard to grant it. I always thought the liquor license should always come after a special permit's been issued, because you have all the information in front of you and then the license follows that. Same with service. I believe that agreement states that alcohol service will stop 45 minutes before the facility closes. Are we going to do that still, or do we allow alcohol service and food service right up to the time it closes? I just think there's a lot of additional questions.
I would just like to add, remembering parts of the conversation too, that we were looking for consistency through our establishments and everyone on a level playing field. And this agreement could deviate from our original intent. So I would default to Kathy or Tom. I believe you were part of those discussions back when this took place. Could I start with Kathy?
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to scan through the document, as Ralph just said, because we got it so close to our opening. There is a reference in here to the entertainment license for the hours of 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. and that is not consistent with the realignment we did with all licenses back in late 2018. I'm sure this document that we're reviewing preceded the local licensing authorities' decision to do that, but nonetheless, that has to be tweaked in the language. And my understanding also is that food must be served up until 30 minutes before the close of business, which in this case with the realignment of our licenses would be 12:30 a.m. So there are some inconsistencies that have to be, cleared up. I would agree with Ralph that we need to, just so that we're not approving something that gives false impressions to the licensee, and then we have to come back and undo it. I would rather see that we wait for an opinion and take no action tonight. Unfortunately, that pulls out the applicant's timetable all the more, but I'd rather do this right one time than have to come back and redo something.
Thanks. I will add that our next scheduled council meeting would be on the 23rd of the month, and I would be hopeful that if that's the course of action we take, we would be able to resolve any and all issues at that date and time. Are there, Pat?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, it seems to me that 13 months ago or whenever it was, we had an issue with respect to there being a second floor of that building. And I noticed in the application, they described the first floor and the basement, but there's no reference to a second floor where we believe there was actually an apartment at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Can Attorney Oppenheimer respond to that?
There is a picture of the second floor plan in their application.
Second floor, Mr. Henry, contains a small apartment and a small office. It's outlined in the floor plan that was submitted to the town council and submitted to the planning board as well. If I could, Mr. President, address some of the comments from Mrs. Hill and Mr. Page. This application was submitted on January 15th. We're now basically in the middle of March because your February meeting was, chock-a-block full of, I think, budgetary issues. The town certainly was aware of this agreement, or should have been aware of this agreement, a year ago when I was before you. I was made aware of it in November, and I was told that town council would be looking at this. And, now it's 4 or 5 months later, and I'm told, this is still an issue. If you look at the decision, or the agreement, I guess is a better way of putting it. It was to right a number of wrongs by the property owner. Okay, not my clients, the property owner. And obviously there were some infractions that the town was concerned about, and it resulted in this agreement in basically in lieu of loss of license, et cetera. So we're not running a nightclub. We're running a family Mexican restaurant. I've already told you the hours that we're requesting. If you're telling me that, all the licenses in town are, that one of the rules is that we have to stop serving 45 minutes before, before we close, we'll adhere to those rules. We want to adhere to those rules. But appreciate, I guess, on some level that we have been in this process now for quite some time, and someone or some group needs to take the bull by the horns and make some decisions on this agreement, which I think now is frankly moot. Okay, it forced the Coelhos to do certain things that they should have done, without being forced, i.e. getting permits for the decks and certain violations of their liquor license and other things. So I represent Barrera Inc. We have no interest in violating any of your bylaws, and only an interest in having a good relationship with the community, because we rely on the community for our business and our goodwill. So I guess I would implore you, if you're going to put this over, to really have someone make it a priority to figure out what you want to do with this agreement. Because you won't get, I don't think you're going to get anyone who is truly interested in running a business in your community with an agreement like this sort of hanging over their head. At any point, town council or the planning board or any other board can say, oh, well, we have this agreement and now, we're changing the rules. The rules should be what you decide as a result of this hearing and what the planning board decides as a result of their hearing. And not something that is now, I think, ancient history, 2018. Thank you.
Okay, I see 3 hands up and I will get to everybody, but I will start with Pat.
Thank you, Mike. I am sympathetic with Attorney Oppenheim's contention. And to me, it appears that as though the agreement is between us and the Coelhos. The town and the Coelhos has nothing to do with his client. I don't understand why it can't just stay in force, because we would like to enforce it as to the landlord,
Right.
if the landlord ever needs to. But it doesn't seem to me it even should have an impact on the application, which the application is saying they're going to run a restaurant in accordance with current bylaws. So to me, this may be a situation where the planning board has overreacted and is trying to conflate the two issues. I think the agreement probably needs to stay in place, but I don't think it affects or should affect the application. I could be wrong, but that's my inclination. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Kathy, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. My comment kind of parallels what Pat was just saying, because I just wanted to ask Attorney Oppenheim again. I recall you saying at the outset of your presentation that your client had no interest in that agreement whatsoever, that they didn't feel that they needed to, I don't want to say comply, but you know what I'm saying, that you didn't see it as a valid piece of the application. Am I missing that?
I think that's correct, Mrs. Hill. And I think if the council chose to vote this evening, consistent with what Mr. Henry just said, that the council doesn't feel, or they take a position that what my client's trying to do should not prevent a special permit from issuing by your planning board, because in their eyes it's a bar to even making a decision. So, you know, from a procedural point of view, I'm getting tossed back to you guys.
Right.
And I really, you know, if I go before them next week and they'll say, well, didn't you understand what we said, Mr. Oppenheim? You know, are you guys in Cape Cod, you know, idiots? We wanted the town council to make a decision as to whether this agreement was relevant to your special permit or not. And I said I would try to do that.
Marilyn, I saw your hand up earlier.
You know, basically Pat addressed what I was talking about. You know, this agreement is with the property owner, and it really doesn't have any bearing on the business that's trying to do business at that location. But I don't see how that we can just eliminate it at this point unless we're directed, or unless our town council says otherwise. But maybe we can vote contingent, or let the planning board know that this is not an issue.
Okay, I am going to get to everybody. Ralph?
So 2 points, Mike. If I remember right from my planning board days, the special permit follows the property, not specifically the owner, such as if a property allowed a restaurant under special permit, just because they sell it doesn't mean that the special permit's going, you can continue to operate a restaurant. I may be incorrect, but in the back of my mind, I remember something to that effect. What I'd like to see is our attorney work in conjunction in the next week or so with the planning board on a new special permit for this restaurant, which basically says all other special permits previously for this location are null and void. Here is the only one that's current, that's operating. And that way this agreement would be null and void, and there would only be one special permit with one set of criteria on the property. I think that would be the clean and crisp way to do this, because I've already pulled up the special permit application and all. And if you take a look at it, it looks like there's 4 or 5 different special permits that's hanging over it. There's a variance from the past and stuff like that. It would be nice just to clean all of those up and say that's all part of the past. As of today, it's only this permit going forwards. And I just want to put out there my opinion as far as a liquor license for this. I voted for it before. I don't see really any changes except for just tidying things up to make sure when it goes forwards that there is no other issues.
The concern I'm seeing, as you stated, is that the special permit goes with the establishment. So if the business that's moving in there right now were to fail and another business were to come in, if that special permit would be inherited by the new business, right? Or revert back to the original owner, correct?
Are you asking?
Yes, sir.
Because, so my experience, which is largely on Cape Cod, is I think consistent with what Mr. Page said, which is a special permit gets recorded at the registry and runs with the property.
Correct.
And is not personal to the property owner. Now, that's my experience.
Mhm.
Now, I'm out in East Longmeadow, and my experience is broadening because I have clients who want to go in and run a restaurant where a restaurant has been run, and they're told that they have to get a new special permit. So I'm thinking that the planning board would maybe disagree with Mr. Page, because I was a little surprised that we had to go in and, you know, sort of redo a special permit for a restaurant. You know, isn't there some continuity if someone has a restaurant permit? So I am sympathetic with what Mr. Page said, and I'd like to believe that he's accurate. But I think the reality is that your bylaw requires that when there's a new owner, there needs to be a new special permit.
Ralph, just 1 minute. Don?
Yeah, council is correct. If the new business has to apply for a special as well. That was simpler. You know, we've had that happen with the Asian restaurant that ended up becoming, what's it called now? Bistro, you know, over time. I think the issue, this particular property that they're putting it on was a hodgepodge of over the years. It had so many different owners, so many, yet the same person, but different names for the same individual or same entities. There was no permits taken out. And this was an effort by the town council, conjunction, the property owner, to try to fix a number of wrongs over the years. Is it necessary to get rid of this permit, this agreement? And you know, remember, this is not a special permit. This is trying to fix a whole bunch of mistakes and loose happened over years. Is getting rid of it? No, I don't think so. We should let and I see there's a member in the audience as well, to say that that's not going to affect us in making this a liquor license. And on the new special permit, this dealt with the owner of the building, so that in the future it doesn't work out for the Mexican restaurant, and it goes back to the current. This can still be used when he tries to resurrect or apply for a new special permit, should he choose in the future. So I would rather keep this here, make it clear to the planning board that as long as everything is done the right way in the new special permit, that the wrongs that were trying to be addressed by this agreement have been fixed, permits correct, with building code, et cetera, all the things that are listed on there. I'm okay passing or approving the liquor license transfer as well, but with information being sent to the planning board that I don't want this removed because it could come back to in the off chance that this Mexican restaurant doesn't succeed in the future.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the council at this point in time? Pat?
Just to follow, thank you, Mike. Just a follow-up question about the second floor space. Am I to understand from Attorney Oppenheim that the second floor space is not going to be part of the restaurant that they are running, that they will not have control over that space, and that's why it's not on the application?
Mr. Henry, you're not correct. We will be renting the entire building.
Building,
So
okay.
we will have control over the second floor. And it may be that the apartment will be used by our manager, for instance, or one or more of our employees who are working there. There is an office area too.
I believe the apartment may be illegal, is what I'm saying.
Well,
the office is fine, but I don't believe anyone is allowed to reside there.
I don't think you're correct on that. I didn't see anything in the agreement that said that could not be used. It has two means of egress, as far as we are aware. And as far as, I mean, everything, all the marketing was around it being a legal use up there.
Thank you.
Okay, we can check that out. And I would urge you, as the advocate for the applicant, to vote a favorable decision on the transfer, and perhaps to have a second vote that sends whatever message you want to send to the planning board that would allow them to entertain issuing a special permit to my clients, so we don't have to go, back and forth on this issue. Even if that means keeping this agreement in place, I mean, I'm not adverse to that, as long as the message to the planning board is, go ahead, deal with this special permit as you would.
I agree.
Most of the items in the agreement were to correct things, which I'm quite sure the Coelhos had to do in order to, reopen and to do business there. They had to submit building permits, and they had to do various things as the agreement outlines, and that was done back in 2018.
Any other, Ralph?
So Mike, just two things. Pat, you had asked about the apartment. I actually talked to our zoning enforcement officer, building commissioner, and he said that to his knowledge, that apartment is a legal apartment, that it's been in existence since before the bylaw went in, from what he could see, and that he had no issues whatsoever with it. Because I did follow up after last year with him just to ask him about that.
Thanks, Ralph.
And then Mike, under our agreement, I'm looking at section number 8, which says, subsequent to the execution of this agreement, all applications for licenses, permits, special permits, and the like shall be made pursuant to this agreement and consistent with applicable law. So it sounds to me like what it's basically saying is a special permit and all can be issued. This agreement is pretty much between the owners of GMCR and the town. And if someone else was to go in, that as long as they obtain a special permit and all, and they follow this agreement, that there's no issue. Looking at the special permit application, they're not asking for the use of the back deck or all now. This says that it's only to be used for smoking at this time. So I would say that they were in a agreement, with this. And I don't think there would be an issue going forwards.
Okay. I was going to ask Jamie to provide the luxury to Attorney Kelly if he is in the audience and he might be able to add any information to this council pertaining to this approval.
Okay, I can send him in.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Attorney Kelly. I guess you're here. We see you and we can hear you, and we're hoping that you might be able to add some valuable information to help our board.
Well, I don't want to say I'm sorry to disappoint, but I think I wasn't the attorney that was representing the Meadows at the time of that was negotiated. But I think an easy solution might be, to just change the special permit to, I don't understand why we can't just understand that they're opening a restaurant. And I get the idea that we don't want to go back to the bad old days. I understand that. I think it's an easy work to amend the special permit to not apply to this particular petitioner. I mean, I've been in a lot of other locales. I was actually served on the city council in Springfield for a number of years. And the first line of every special permit there says this special permit is for this petitioner only. I know Chicopee and other places do that as well. Maybe there's a way to fashion that. I absolutely agree with what Mr. Page had to say, is you don't want to then open the door for, if this place goes under, to go right back where you were in the frying pan. That's a perfectly reasonable idea. I think the answer is perhaps reworking it to that it does not apply to this particular new petitioner. Certainly that would be the case. Also, it precludes outdoor eating, which is counterintuitive to what the mandate is now from the governor. And I know Mr. Oppenheim says they're not applying for that now. I think it's more out of expediency than anything. So, but I think there is a middle ground to be had where you simply acknowledge the fact that you are in favor of this project. You're not in favor of the bad old times, and structure the special permit accordingly and just write right on it. This particular special permit is for this petitioner only. And then Mr. Coelho is still bound by that other special permit because it's running with the land, as Mr. Page appropriately pointed out. And again, I've run this past year, our legal counsel, but that would be, I think, a reasonable middle ground that would satisfy both sides. You'd have the Mexican restaurant can open up, and you wouldn't have the concert hall creating a loophole where they could kind of crawl back in. I don't know. That's just my suggestion, but I'm willing to put that and work with any town council member and or your legal department if I can add anything.
Thank you. Sir.
Mind, members of the council, that the agreement is one that my clients are not party to. And it is not, as someone mentioned, it is not a special permit. So I'm not disagreeing with my colleague, Dan, that you should go forward and you should find a way to be able to make this happen. And if you want to keep this agreement in place, that's fine. But this is not an agreement that I would want my client to be subject to, because there's a lot of stuff in here that they have nothing to do with. And, if the special permit pulls a paragraph or two out and makes it part of the special permit, fine. But this whole agreement, was born out of, some infractions, and I don't want to start that way with a community that my clients are going to be doing, business in. And I like, kind of the clean slate, special permit. This is what we expect of you, so our clients know exactly what they can do.
Thank you. Pat.
I'd like to make a motion, Mike, to follow up on this discussion. for discussion, I would like to move that the town council instruct the planning board to consider the application for special permit by Barrera Inc. while the existing agreement with GMRC remains in force.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Marilyn, you're muted.
My husband loves it when I'm muted. I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
So,
Pat?
Thank you, Mike, as the maker of the motion. Yes, that's right. I would like to get the response of Attorney Oppenheim if he thinks this would be an appropriate motion that would help him and his client.
Attorney Oppenheim?
think so. It would be helpful if the clerk could read it back so that we can all hear it one more time.
Okay. Jeannie, you're muted.
It's Jackie.
No, I'm looking for Jeannie.
Jackie's taking the minutes, so she'd have that down there.
Right.
Okay. Jackie's muted.
I can repeat it as well.
Okay.
There she is.
Can you repeat it?
Thank you.
You got it.
Did you, I think what we're looking for is, could you read back the motion that Pat Henry put on the floor, please?
And
Can
I
you
think
repeat that, Pat?
Yes, I'd be happy to repeat it.
Thank you.
perfect.
I move that the town council instruct the planning board to consider the application for special permit by Barrera Inc. while the existing agreement with GMRC remains in force.
Okay.
Try not to get too wordy.
Right. I think I'm hoping, Mr. Henry, that it is clear to the planning board, and it's clear to me. I think it should carry the day there, but I guess I say that a little bit advisedly because of my experience last November. I appreciate the sentiment, and hopefully the planning board will take it up in its entirety.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor, and the motion's been seconded. And for further discussion purposes, Mr. Anderson.
I was wondering if I don't want to put him on the spot, but John Torsha is in the audience, and he's on just to see what his take on it, again, if appropriate.
I would have to ask Jamie if he is available, but just for further discussion. And here is Jonathan.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, President Kane.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jeff.
Could you shed any
so-
light on the conversation based on planning board conversation?
Yeah, so I know from our previous meeting, which I believe, yes, was in, I think the November, October timeframe, this agreement kind of was unearthed shortly before that meeting. So we didn't necessarily feel comfortable, if I'm remembering correctly, taking an action at that point and having this go towards the council instead to discuss this agreement. We kind of discussed a broad range of things. One of our, I think, concerns was at that point in time, which now I think is moot, is having tables and chairs and people outside on that deck. There was some concern by neighbors within the area, because if you know the area, there are this is one of those rare restaurants that kind of have surrounded by kind of houses. So we had some neighbors come on to the meeting to just share a little bit of concern. But at least I can't speak for my other planning board members. But we're always very receptive to new special permits, new restaurants and businesses that would like to come into the community. So as long as things are kind of, it appears that there's sort of a little bit of a divorce between this agreement, which is more to the building owner, and sort of this is more of a standalone special permit issue. So, I don't see, an issue with that, but I would caution, I don't like speaking on behalf of my other committee members when saying that. But I know this will definitely be on our agenda this time next week.
Okay, so it's scheduled for the next planning board meeting. It will be an agenda item, correct?
That I am almost positive. Yes, I'm 99% sure.
Thank you.
It's been noticed as a public hearing, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none. From listening to the motion, there's nothing in the motion about continuing, so I'm assuming we're going to close this public hearing. We can roll call vote that. Go ahead, Ralph.
So right at the moment, this motion is only basically to tell the planning board to go ahead with their process of the special permit. The liquor license public hearing is still open at this moment. So it's two separate items.
Correct. Okay, so if there's no further discussion on the motion that's currently on the floor, we're ready to roll call vote this. So I will start with Marilyn.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes. Do we want to put another motion on the floor with direction?
Kathy's muted.
There you go.
There I am. I move to approve the transfer of the all alcohol on premises liquor license from GMRC Inc., doing business as Figueres, 621 North Main Street, to Barrera Inc., doing business as Torito Mexican Restaurant, and also approve Ramon Michel Jr. as the manager, as shown on the transfer application.
Thank you.
Second.
And motion from Kathy and seconded by Pat. Is there any further discussion? Ralph?
Mike, I would like to see, possibly adding language in there that this will be contingent upon a special permit being issued. We don't want the liquor license there, do we, without them having the permit to operate a restaurant? And that's more of a general question as far as what the council feels on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Kathy, you want to amend that motion and add that language?
Yes, I can amend it. Contingent, do I have to read it all over again?
You can take it from the contingent part. I think Jackie has the remainder.
So I'll start with, and also approve Ramon Michel Jr. as the manager as shown on the transfer application. This approval is contingent upon the successful issuance of a special permit by the planning board.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the amended motion?
Second.
I heard a second from Tom. Okay, motion from Kathy, seconded by Tom. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Mr. President, thank you to the entire council.
I believe we want a roll call vote and close the public hearing at this time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Marilyn with a roll call vote starting with Kathy.
She said yes.
That was a yes? Yes. I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. I want to thank Attorney Offenheim for your time, a great presentation, and on behalf of this entire council, we want to wish your customer and our business partner in the community all success for many years to come. Thank you.
Hope you'll all have an opportunity to enjoy my client's restaurant in the coming months. And we very much look forward to being able to do business in your community. We've been hanging in there for the last, year plus because of the pandemic. So we're excited to hopefully be in business by the summertime.
All right, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your patience in the delay of the start of the public hearing, and we will catch up soon enough.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Point of order, Michael.
Please.
I just received a communication from Chris Saulnier and Jim Broderick. They are the last item on our agenda, and they're asking if we could postpone that item. They see this meeting going quite long, and they don't, they have a life. They don't want to sit and wait till the very end of the meeting, so they'd like to postpone.
We could do that, or I could offer one other suggestion. If there's an appetite for coming out of order, maybe we could change the agenda order and move them up and proceed with that right now.
That's entirely up to the council. They weren't asking that. They were just asking to postpone.
Okay.
I'd like to see us take it out of order.
Yes.
I second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We're going to go from orders of day licensing matters to the discussion regarding the responsibilities and duties of the Town Council Financial Oversight Committee. So Jackie, could you please, Jamie, could you please bring them into our meeting?
What's the second name again?
Sonia.
Okay. Chris is muted at this time. She comes off mute.
She doesn't know how. There we go.
Point of order. Do we need to finish voting on the motion to move out of order?
Yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And Pat?
Yes.
Motion passes. Chris and Jim, we're sorry things ran as long as they did. We're hopeful that this move coming out of order on our agenda will suffice to bring some closure to this subject matter. I would ask Jim, as the chair of the committee, what you can bring forward for us tonight regarding your hard work.
Thank you very, very much. Jim Broderick, this year's chair of the Financial Oversight Committee. Chris Saulnier is the last 2 years chair of the Financial Oversight Committee. And thank you for your time. It was determined that it might be a good idea to just lay out what our responsibilities as we see it are, that the town council has charged us with, and make sure that there's an agreement, or if there isn't, that we get clarified and put in the right direction. And I believe it was shared with you. I had 3 bullet points just to cover, and under the responsibilities as we see it for the committee. First of all, of course, it was created by town council as a committee of the town council, and the purpose is to review on behalf of the town council the draft fiscal year town budget, both operating and capital, revolving and enterprise funds, and make recommendations to the town council of any changes to the draft budget for the council to consider in its deliberations regarding the budget and its vote authorizing the final approved fiscal year budget. And bullet number 3 is the committee is authorized by the town council to conduct a review of the draft budgets and to contact on behalf of the town council, the town manager, department heads, boards, including school board and school administration, as needed to discuss and investigate the budgets in order to develop the committee's recommendations to the town council. So that's what we have kind of perceive as our charge. Just want to make sure if that's consistent with the town council's understanding.
I believe it is. I would just like, for the record here, to refer to Rule 11. And the Financial Oversight Standing Committee will be comprised of up to 3 council members and up to 3 town residents. It will be responsible for working with the town manager and department heads to review the town manager's proposed annual budget and capital plan and report its recommendations to the full council. Jim, obviously, you've added to that and elaborated on it, which makes it very clear to all parties this evening. And I would open this up for discussion purposes for it. And Marilyn, I see your hand, so we'll start with you.
Thank you, Michael. As one counselor, I'm glad that we're having the opportunity to have this discussion, because there's been a lot of chatter lately about budgets being received by the town manager, and I'm speaking about the school department budget. This came up with the charter review committee's deliberations, and to see something in writing is always better, so that there's continuity going from council year to council year, and a financial oversight committee to another financial oversight committee. My question is, I know that the committee is referenced, as Michael said, number 11 in our council rules. Where can we keep this information? Can we reference it in the council rules, and can our clerk keep it on file, or so that the committees know, because we'll have different people serving in the future. So this is wonderful, Jim. I appreciate you spending the time putting it together, and Chris as well, I'm sure. And Tom O'Connor had some input in prior years. So it's good, but we need to not forget it.
Sure. I'd be happy to give it to anyone in order for it to be recorded and it put somewhere that's accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, like Marilyn stated, members can change from year to year. Having a document that we adopted, have it recorded in the minutes, gives us guidelines to follow, and hopefully there's pieces in this document that all of us contributed to have a well-orchestrated document to work in the future. Kathy?
Just off the top of my head, why don't we consider wrapping this language right into that piece of Rule 11, and then it's memorialized?
Yes. Yeah, good point, Kathy.
I couldn't agree more. So,
Is that a motion?
how about Pat?
Mike, would that just take an action on your part? It's council rules after all.
It's a vote.
I think we have to vote.
It's a vote?
Just for safety purposes, I would roll call vote it, but
So, Mike, before we vote it in, I just have a quick question. I know it says that the finance committee can talk to other boards, commissions and all. I'm assuming what they're saying is through the chairman of that committee, or are they talking each individual member, however many members can talk through? I mean, I would assume that they would propose questions, and then the chairman of the finance subcommittee would send those off to whoever he sees fit.
I believe that would be proper protocol.
Yeah, I would agree with Chairman Kane. That would be our normal protocol. And it may also include, depending on the complexity of the issue or the questions, perhaps even a meeting, but it would be arranged through the chairs.
That would be good. So you'd be, yeah, obviously establishing a rapport with the department heads. If your board had other subject matters that needed to be looked at in more depth, they could bring that to you and you could continue working with the department head for resolution. So, Marilyn.
It goes without saying that all boards, departments, et cetera, include the school department. It's not written. I just want to make sure that it's understood.
Yeah, and sorry, Marilyn, in rule number 3 or bullet number 3,
Right.
we do specifically include the school board and school administration, just as a clarification.
So both of these documents would be kept together. That's my hope. Yeah.
Yeah, so regarding the school committee, I mean, it would be basically council delegating those conversations to the chair of the Financial Oversight Committee, and the chair of that committee would have direct dialogue with the chair of the school committee unless he or she decided to delegate that to another member of that particular board, correct?
Yes.
Yep. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. What 2 documents is Councilor Richards referring to?
She's referring to, well, I'll let Marilyn speak, but I believe she's referring to Rule 11 that I read into the record, and this would be, I believe, an amendment or an addition to rule. Is that correct?
If I may, Michael,
Please.
Jeannie sent us backup documentation. One of our emails, Pat, has both of these documents in them. One of them says responsibilities of the town council's Financial Oversight Committee, and the other one says proposed budget package documentation for use in FY 2020 budget process.
That's what I thought you were referencing, and I would disagree with that. I would definitely disagree with that. I thought what Mike was saying, Rule 11 and this responsibilities would be connected together. I think we haven't discussed the other document yet, so it would be too early for me to.
That was Pat, that was my intent, and I believe Kathy, that's the direction we were pushing. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we are.
So I guess they wanted to vote on that.
Yeah. Okay, how about, could I have that in the form of a motion?
I move that the document entitled Responsibilities of the Town Council's Financial Oversight Committee be included immediately under Rule 11 of the current Town Council rules.
Second.
Okay, Pat, thank you for the motion. I believe, Tom, did you second the motion?
Yes, I think several did.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll roll call vote this. Pat?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
We have a confirmed unanimous motion adopted. All right. Tim?
There was a second document that the committee shared with the town council members. And it's basically really a guideline, informational. It kind of just puts down on paper what we typically have received in my experience for the 2 years that I have previously been on the Financial Oversight Committee, but it kind of puts it down in writing the package that we would anticipate receiving in order to review and discharge the responsibilities that we have.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Pat?
I think this is excellent, Mike, and thank you, Jim. I want to apologize to Councilor Richards for jumping in and taking this out of that prior motion. And the reason I did that is because I think this could change each year. This is getting down into the weeds. And while I think everything here is perfect for this year, there may be some changes, and I would hesitate to want to see this actually incorporated as a council rule. Personal opinion. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this, or if not, I would like to thank you, Jim, for your time. Chris, it's nice seeing you again, and we'll be looking forward to working with everybody and compiling a great budget going forward for 2022. So
Thank you, everyone.
thank you all.
Thank you.
So jumping back under orders of the day, there are no licensing matters right now under financial matters. This is a CPC vote that was taken, and I would ask Jamie if she could kindly bring John Torsha back into our meeting and help us with these next two approvals from the community preservation funding. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Mr. President. Would we also be able to bring in the actual applicants of this first matter? I believe Tina Osgood and Donna Martinez are in the attendees list.
Okay. I see Tina. So, Jonathan, could you just refresh the council's memory on the funding of the historic preservation? I believe CPC voted on that, and that's why it's in the council's hands at this point.
Yes. So just sort of kind of to go over generally, we're going to have another application. This is sort of going to be, you'll be seeing likely in the coming weeks, a series of different applications that the CPC has recommended to the council. As some may not know in the public, we recommend projects, and then the council has the final say on these matters. We get this funding kind of that we have, that the CPC has, comes from 65% of it undesignated and 10% for these different committees. So every year that gets sliced up, and this application will be coming out of the historic fund that we have. So there's actually not just this application, there will be another application, I believe at a later date, that we will be bringing towards the council. I can definitely go into the projects some more, but I do see our applicants here, so one or both of them might be good at kind of explaining the nature of this project that's before you. This will be a replacement of part of the porch that you would see driving by the Norcross House property. So with that, I do.
Jonathan, fortunately, we have all the information here. What I would like to do is keep your attendees in the audience at this point, but I'd like to put a motion on the floor in a second for discussion purposes, and hopefully Donna or Tina or yourself, can wrap into that discussion if required. So I'll entertain a motion.
So, Mike, I would make a motion that we approve the community preservation funding of $11,625 from the historic preservation account for the reimbursement to the Friends of the Norcross House for repairs to the porch of the Norcross House.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion now and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Just one point, when I was going through what I had submitted prior to this, I forgot to add in the photos. So I would be happy to send that after the fact if the council wanted to take a look at those photos. So that was an oversight error on my end, sending this information to the council, but I'm happy to provide those photos of the showing the damaged porch area.
Thanks, Jonathan. Pat?
The only thing that was unclear to me, Mike, is whether the porch has already been fixed and we're reimbursing it, or whether we're providing the money so they can fix it.
So I can default to Jonathan, or he can pass to Donna or Tina, whatever your pleasure might be.
Don or Tina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know this has already been replaced and this will be a reimbursement.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thanks, Donna.
you're welcome.
Is there any other discussion? Ralph?
So typically, from what I understand with CPC is we're not allowed to use the funds for general maintenance. But I do remember seeing Stuart Saganor, who's from the CPA, talk about this. And his comment was that we spent all this money on the Norcross House to do it. It's a historical site. It would not make sense for us to let it go into disrepair. I am definitely for the funding of this. I think it's a good thing, and I think they need to keep it up. I think that's what we're here for, is to help under the historical.
Mm-hmm. I do as well. Marilyn?
To echo Ralph's comments, I sat in on this meeting, and it's, the porch was basically, the damaged area was restored to its original appearance. And that's the goal. I mean, you can get caught up on words. Is this a repair or is this a restoration? But the whole focus is to maintain this property in its historical presence, if you will. So yeah, it's done.
Thanks, Marilyn. If there's no further discussion, this is a required roll call vote, and I don't see any further discussion. So Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
All right, Jonathan, stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We'll move right over to our second issue here. And maybe you can give us a brief description on the funds for the open space rec account.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the applicants are in the audience, Melanie Akobe or Bill Cosmo.
Yeah.
Bill's in the audience.
Bill's in the audience.
Okay. We can pull him in.
We did get the pictures on that.
Okay, good. Thank you. So basically, this account, we recommend that the council takes the money from this account. This is by far the smallest application that we have that we have recommended, that is sort of that we've had for the last year or so. And we felt it was appropriate to come out of open space and rec. This will be a small addition to the Bark Park that is at the Heritage Park. I think this will kind of go to enhance or make it the area more safe for dog walking owners and their dogs as well. And also the organization that kind of volunteers and helps maintain the park is going to be putting in $1,000 as well. So this is, the total cost is $5,600, and the CPC recommended, the applicant asked for us for $4,600.
All right. Thank you. For discussion purposes, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the community preservation funding of $4,600 from the open space and recreation account for a Bark Park partial walkway installation.
I second.
Thanks, Don. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing it's up. Ralph?
So I have a couple concerns with this. One being on capital, we have a very large request, and that is to basically fund redoing all of Heritage Park. Part of redoing all of Heritage Park is possibly moving the Bark Park. I don't want to see us spend money on something and then literally tear it apart and move it. I don't know where we're going with that. Obviously, I had a capital planning meeting today. It was brought up. I'm thinking personally that it's probably going to be a few years before we get to that. But again, I just hate to see us spend money on something and tear it up. And then my only other question was on funding a walkway under the open space. Is this actually like a walkway? It looked more like an area for asphalt so that you could stand on and not get your feet dirty, as compared to, you know, like a walkway around Heritage Park or something on that idea. I'm just not sure under CPC guidelines if this qualifies. And that would be a question for Jonathan. I'm sure he's already brought it up.
So yeah, so I looked into this. So just on your first concern, I know that the dog park's located kind of on the edge a little bit. So this walkway won't be touching the property line. That was a little bit of a concern. This will be more closer into where the park is, and you know, depending, you know, kind of seeing where the location of the dog park is. I'm not sure of the kind of the significant changes that might be happening to Heritage Park, but you know, that might be more closer towards the middle of the park or whatnot, but I haven't seen the project. In terms of the second question, I had, you know, spoken to Stuart. He's sort of my guru to go to for these things. And, you know, he said it was acceptable. There's a lot of the wording that CPC has, the language that CPC has, can be flexible. So, you know, as the last project was, this project, I would consider this a capital investment to the Bark Park. And a walkway would be considered that. There are certain limitations. You know, we can't have, we can't pay for, you know, yearly maintenance on something. We can't, you know, fund buildings. They would have to basically be, there's certain limitations with funding for buildings, for example. We can't pay people, you know, for example. So this would absolutely fall, I should say, absolutely fall within the CPC guidelines, at least with open space and rec. The committee can also take money out of undesignated funds if they so choose.
Mike, just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
Can we ask Mary? She's in charge of basically all property, town property. I just want to confirm that, yes, she's good with this, knowing where we're going.
Mary, could you come up? There you go.
Sorry, putting you on the spot, Mary.
It's all right. Frankly, I'm a little ambivalent about this project. I had expressed to Jonathan some months back some reluctance to fund this, but not for the reasons you're discussing tonight. I was more concerned about some liability issues for the town that may arise. But the Heritage Park could well be one of the largest endeavors that the community takes on over the next 10 years. Despite that, it's a small amount of money, and I agree with you, Ralph, that if this project at Heritage Park does take off, chances are that there won't be any true impact to the land for several years. So because it's only $4,600 or give or take, I think it's small money to pay for the use and enjoyment by those who would use it. I have those reservations about liability and about access once the Big Y Plaza rents out that Staples site to some other third party, because I think the access is through the parking lot on the side of the Big Y lot there, and absent an agreement between the property owner for parking and things of that nature, I think we may have some problems in the future. But despite all that, for $4,600, I think it's worth a chance.
Thank you.
Okay. Tom, I saw your hand up earlier.
My question has been addressed, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from the council at this point? Don?
Well, I see Bill has.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I just wanted to make address a couple of the comments that were made. The park the dog park started about 12, and it's been in existence about 2012 is when we initiated the park. So it's going on 9 years this summer. And we went through quite a process at that time with the planning board and all the committees at that time in town, including conservation committee. So the design of the park itself is contingent on the distance from the wetlands and some open areas that the planning board wanted to maintain towards North Main Street. And the whole concept of the park was granted to us based on these dimensions that fit in Heritage Park. They offered another smaller area over by the baseball diamond that was not considered. So this itself was approved by all the committees in town at the time, including the town council, planning board, conservation. And to move that now would be quite a major project, to be honest with you, as far as, moving everything that's in place now, because the whole ground has changed, ground cover has changed. We removed the bad trees, we cleaned up the place. Of course, the fence is up, and there's no permanent foundations anywhere. But you're looking at 9 years of existence with 1,500 dogs that have been registered to that park over this period of time. So I just want to throw the comments out there that this design of the park in Heritage Park, I can't imagine many places where that's going to fit other than where it is right now. But we'll see what happens with the major projects that we're talking about.
All right. Thanks, Bill. We appreciate the comments. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. We'll roll call vote on this, starting with Marilyn Richards.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you all, and thanks for the presentation, Jonathan, William, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Great evening.
So, next order of business is the amendment of July 21st in 2020 regarding a motion allocation of funds for the high school feasibility study. I can just touch on this briefly, that there was a firm that was hired to help us with the language here. I want to say Lock and Load, but I'm just trying to be comical. It's actually Lock and Lord. And the attorney recommended specific language if we are going to try to recoup through a grant any portion of the 1.2 money for the feasibility study. So this motion only has to do with tweaking the original motion so that that grant would not be denied in the future. Does anyone else have any questions on it before I ask for this motion? Ralph?
Mike, we're not replacing the motion that we made before, we're adding to it.
Correct. And I'm calling it amendment because there were many other moving parts to this motion. If we were to take a look at it and it was decided for all the right reasons that we're only amending one portion of the original motion, so we're adding to that. That being said, I'll entertain that motion, and whoever has it, we have quite an amendment to read into the record. So,
Okay, Mike, I move we amend the July 21st, 2020 motion number 3 to include the following. That the town of East Long Meadow appropriate the amount of $1,260,000 for the purpose of paying estimated costs for feasibility study for construction and/or rehabilitation of the East Long Meadow High School, 180 Maple Street, East Long Meadow, Mass., including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, and for which the town may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the MSBA, said amount to be expended under the direction of the East Long Meadow High School Building Committee. To meet this appropriation, the town treasurer, with the approval of the town council, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL Chapter 44 or pursuant to any other enabling authority. The town acknowledges that the MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need, as determined by the MSBA. And any costs the town incurs in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the town, and that the amount of borrowing authorized pursuant to this vote shall be reduced by any grant amount set forth in the feasibility study agreement that may be executed between the town and the MSBA. Any premium received upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the general laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount.
Thanks.
I second that.
And thank you for the second. The motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ralph?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
Thank you all. Okay. Pat, while you're front and center, we're moving to old business and would appreciate an update on the kennel licenses from the bylaw committee.
I don't know, I'm kind of tired from reading that thing. To report, the bylaw committee met on February 24th, 2021. Also present was Planning Director Bethany Yao. The committee noted that Doherty Wallace had indicated that our existing special permits were fine as is, but that we should require kennel licenses for pet daycare facilities and execute planning to do that. So the bylaw committee recommends 2 amendments to be made. 1, under the general bylaws, section 4.04, town clerk, a line number 33 be added for kennel licenses, which are not currently there. 1 to 4 dogs, $30, 5 to 10 dogs, $60, and $20 for each additional dog over 10. And that latest change was suggested by Mary. Originally, we'd said more than 10 dogs, $100. But I think it makes sense. 1 to 4 dogs, 30, 5 to 10 dogs, 60, $20 for each additional dog over 10. That's the first suggestion that was made. And the second is a motion that we amend the zoning bylaws, section 7.2 special permits, subsection 730 criteria, that adds a new section I that says all required state and local licenses must be acquired and kept current. That will solve the issue of whether a dog license is required under the special permits going forward. If the council approves these suggestions, the bylaw committee will draft a red line copy and so forth for the town with the town attorney in advance of scheduled public hearings, which this would be a bylaw that change that would have to be approved by public hearing. That's my report. Any questions?
Marilyn.
I think Ralph's hand was up first. Do you want to go first, Ralph?
Doesn't matter to me, Marilyn. You're up.
Okay. Okay, just a question about the numbers of these dogs that are being licensed under the kennel license. These are private kennels?
Yes. These
Okay.
are doggy daycares primarily that we're talking about.
Okay, because, and some, is there any, okay, because we don't have commercial kennels, and I just want to make sure that was clear. The second piece referencing the changes in the zoning bylaw.
Yep.
I would expect that this has to come from the planning board. They have to have it's a change in the zoning bylaw. They have to have a public hearing for the change in the zoning bylaw. Then they make a recommendation to the council, and then we act on it.
I know I tried to get the Charter Commission to look at that, but they said no.
I
So we-
don't get your humor.
So we do have to do that.
So Mike, I'm going to jump in. So Marilyn, as the subcommittee, we're recommending that the town council send the zoning language to the planning board, because obviously they have to hold
Perfect. Okay.
the public hearing and all, and then they'll come back to us and say, yes, we're recommending this for a zoning bylaw. Again,
Thank-
it's
thank you.
bouncing back and forth. But I do have a question with regards to the greater than 10 dogs.
Mhm.
I thought currently the kennel license that we issue was for $100 for greater than 10 dogs. And we do have a commercial kennel in town, and I wouldn't want to see them, I wouldn't want to see their fee jump through the roof if we're doing each individual dog at $20 after that. Because the kennel license it's for commercial kennels and private kennels, although we don't allow any private or commercial kennels other than our one that's grandfathered in. So I just don't want to see their fee jump up. I just would like to see us be consistent with what we've been doing. And I believe Mary said we've been issuing these. I think Tom has some information in the past that we had.
Mike?
Tom, I will get to you. Pat, could you clarify Ralph's
Yes,
question?
I understand what Councillor Page is saying, and I think that perhaps we should go back to the original language, because this was a suggestion made by Mary, the town manager, after our meeting. And I think she suggested it because she may not have been thinking of the fact that some of these daycare centers, the amount of dogs would vary by day.
Correct.
And so and especially for a kennel, you just wouldn't know. So perhaps the idea of just more than 10 dogs, $100 might be a better solution. But again, we're going to the planning board, so they get a chance to look at this.
Yeah.
Not for that one.
Yep, thank you.
That's only a general bylaw. That doesn't have to go to the planning board, right? Yeah, that's a general bylaw.
That's
That's
general.
up to the council.
Tom?
I echo what Pat was saying in regards to the number over 10. It's also unenforceable. Given the state of our kennels, we have private kennels in town, and they bring in rescues, and the rescues come and go. They bring in various shelter dogs for temporary storage, and those come and go. So I think we need to stick to solid numbers, as we stated earlier, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and anything over 10. That way we don't have to keep inspecting to make sure that dog numbers are constantly changing.
Okay. Any other questions for Don? Go ahead, Don.
So basically, we're determining the fee. We're determining the fee based on the capacity. They have the capacity to take up to 5. So we have a situation that Tom brought up where they typically handle 1 or 2, but they end up having, and their fee would be based on their capacity, not what their average number of, correct?
Have to be.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Pat or on this particular subject matter? Pat, thanks for the report. I'm sure we'll be hearing more down the road once the other departments have had a chance to view this.
So Mike,
Yes.
do we need to make a motion to refer to the planning board so that they can review this? The portion that's under the zoning bylaw change?
I'm not sure if they need a motion to do that or if it's marked up for
We
them.
just send it
They
to
need
them.
a motion from us?
Marilyn, what's your thought?
Yeah.
You know, as long as it gets to the planning board, you know, we,
So it's better safe. I would make a motion that we send the zoning bylaw change to the planning board.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just one question, Mike.
Go ahead.
As Pat stated, or with the correction on the numbers?
No.
So that's the other one.
Right.
So the one we're sending to the planning board is under section 7.3. It's to add language
Requiring a license.
requiring a license.
Okay. Thank you.
And in regards to further discussion, now that I think about it, I think this is the right way to go. It's very clear on exactly what the objective the council's looking for from the planning board. So we have a motion and a second and no further discussion. Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Don?
Yes.
Thank you. Under new business, street acceptance of Silver Fox Lane. Could I have a motion and a second for discussion purposes?
I move to approve the street acceptance of Silver Fox Lane.
And I will second the motion.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
So Mike, it looks like the DPW is signed off and they're happy with the street being completed. From what I can see, the planning board was happy. They got all the information they needed. So this will be another street that hopefully we can collect some Chapter 90 money on after.
I would confirm that's very accurate. I did talk to Jeannie about it earlier in the week. We have a process and everything was well vetted. And that being said, we can roll call vote this now. Marilyn?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Pat?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next order of business is establishment of town council code of conduct. This has been on the table for, I would say, probably a year and a half. It's been going back and forth with suggestions and recommendations. All of us participated in it. Kathy, you spent more time on this, and I know worked with Jesse as well. Could you give us a little update on where we are?
Sure. Thank you. Pretty much about a year ago, it was actually Pat Henry who put some thoughts on paper about a communications protocol for the council, and it did come out informally to the whole council. With the onset of the pandemic, of course, like many other issues, that couldn't be the priority of our focus. So it was set aside for a while. And then in very late fall, I began looking at what Pat had written and decided, and I mentioned this to Pat around the holidays, that I would also take a run at, putting together my thoughts on how counselors interact with each other, with constituents, with boards and commissions, with back and forth with the manager. And I penned a similar kind of draft as Pat's. And after discussion with Mike, we decided that rather than just bring it back to the council and say, you know, well, we like line 3 of Pat's, but line 4 of Kathy's and back and forth. We sent, or Mike, I should say, sent both versions to Jesse to have some reflections from him. And in a phone conversation at Jesse's request, he wanted some background on, you know, what is it you're trying to accomplish here? And I said pretty much what both documents kind of imply, just a set of guidelines so that communication is appropriate, it is civil, it doesn't violate any of the social media platforms and so forth. And so Jesse's concern was that he didn't disagree with any of the content per se, but his experience with other municipal clients was that they, in certain cases, had developed what he called a code of conduct or a handbook for elected officials. So what you have in front of you today is Jesse's compilation of the work that Pat and I have put on paper. It's certainly not carved in stone, but what I personally like about it is Jesse assured us that this is more appropriate to the municipal way of expressing behavior standards for elected officials. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
All right, before we continue with, I thank you for the presentation, and before we enter discussion, could I have a motion regarding this subject matter?
So Mike, before a motion's made, I mean, I've had a chance to look through some of this and I'm just not comfortable taking a vote on it yet. I'd like to bring up Pat's old document and compare the two. I was hoping that we would just have a general discussion and then we could table it for a meeting or two, or until other counselors have a chance to chime in and make some comments and all on it. There's a few issues in here that I just see personally that concern me.
Okay, Pat?
I appreciate Councilor Hill's referencing me as having contributed to this, but actually I wrote a communications protocol and shared it with the council a year ago. This is not a communications protocol. This is a conduct protocol. It's entirely different. Almost nothing of what I wrote in what I believe is our problems, which is communications, is referenced here. It's mostly conduct while we make those communications. So I am very uncomfortable with this as well in its current format, because to me, there's only 4 things that have been bothering us for the last 2 years. And the document really should say 4 things: that a counselor, just like any regular resident, can ask any town employee a question, and the employee should answer it if they know the answer. Number 2, that a counselor can ask any department head for information, and the department head can either provide it or explain that it would be too time consuming and suggest the request be made through the council president or the town manager. Number 3, a counselor can never ask an employee to do anything or take any direction from a counselor. That's already in the charter. And number 4 would be a recognition that both the counselors and the manager's department heads serve the public together as a team, a joint team, and we all understand and trust each other in that joint obligation. So as a practical matter, that means that the council president's job and the town manager's job are too important and too time consuming for them to be a choke point for every communication to and from the counselors. That's my simple perspective, and these proposed conduct rules don't really address that. And so I have no, they're just different issues. So I would think we definitely would want to table it.
Thanks, Pat. Don?
Yeah, I have a few comments on this. Kind of ironically, one of the things that on Facebook is memories. And 5 years ago, one of my memories was an interview that then Selectman Paul on the Bax and O'Brien show, discussing the matters in East Long Meadow that preceded where we are today with the new form of government. And if these rules were in place then, a good chance that he would have public censure by the other members of the board. What we have to be careful is there's a difference between respect and control. We need to respect the rules, respect each other, respect position, respect the position of the president, respect the town manager, respect each other. But it necessarily should be in any way as a muzzle of keeping us in what we feel is in a responsible respect matters that need to be discussed. And when we are lumped in the same category as any employee media policy, Jeannie to send me a copy of it right here. There's a far cry of an employee hired by one individual in our town or even a committee in our town. We're all hired by voting people of East Long Meadow. That's our responsibility. And if you or I see something that's not correct in how the government is run or anything else, we should be able to respond and to address it and speak up, even if it means going to the media to do what's the right thing. There's the balance here. Like, for instance, the first thing it says to address members of the council and speakers in a respectful tone. Absolutely right. Beyond by the social media policy as any employee of East Long Meadow, I think we were designed to be in politics, to be on our own form of bully pulpit, to advocate causes that we feel are important citizens, and to do it in a legal and a proper way. So I have an issue. You don't understand where a person working for the school, a school teacher, be a different set of rules than a politician or an elected official such as us. Other points about, abiding council decisions. I suggest maybe respect them and understand it and give them, but not necessarily abide. We were in situations in the beginning of the council where we were fragmented. Information was kept out by certain council members. Should and do have a right to speak up on that. And, and directing all complaints to the town manager, that don't necessarily need to go to the town manager. We could be back in the days of social interaction at the Big Y or Dunkin' Donuts and have a question that really should be going to the police department or to the fire department. Here, where it seems to funnel everything to the town manager. I can keep going on. The other big point also is we should have a list of responsibilities. Whoever is the council president or vice president vis-a-vis council members. We should get information, promptly share information for individual council members to be prepared for council meetings, subcommittee meetings, and general council member responsibilities, the people and businesses of East Long Meadow. So information is power, and information should be shared, and as it has been, with our current council president, and should be codified if we're going to be do this moving forward. So I share the concerns of the previous speakers in that this is not ready to be voted on today.
Okay. Any comments from any other members at this point? Kathy?
Yeah, just a point of information, and I'm assuming that all of my council colleagues got the same email from the Massachusetts Municipal Association, and just ironically, there is a webinar on this Thursday from 9:30 to 10:30, and a retired town administrator and I believe an attorney will be speaking and doing the webinar around the topics of developing written codes of conduct policies, civil discourse and social media, managing disputes with fellow board members, how to handle incivility from citizens in public meetings. So it might be worth it's an hour. So if any of you have that kind of time, and it's free, just to get a perspective from, a different set of eyes and from the folks that might be registering to attend like we might be.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kathy. Marilyn?
I'm all set, thanks.
Okay.
So Mike, I would just make a motion that we table this for now until a future meeting.
I will second that.
So there's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I second it.
So any further discussion?
We have Pat's document, and can we have Kathy's input, and can we not table it indefinitely? I think this is something that needs to be addressed. I know personally I've had some concerns about how I have been treated as a person by counselors, and I think it's important that we come to grips with how we need to treat one another. So I don't want this continued 20 years from now. Can we get it on the agenda in 4 weeks?
I would say it will not be on the agenda during the month of March, but I think we all can agree that we're going to revisit it. We have documents in place. Everybody's going to have a particular spin that they want to put on it. So the motion is to table it, and I don't know if we have to tie a specific date to it, but I believe everyone's interest would be to revisit it down the road. The only reason I'm saying March would be tough is because we're looking at, between budget and charter review, possibly a minimum, I would say 2 more meetings in the month of March that I can elaborate on once we get to the end of the meeting. So I think at this point, if everyone's comfortable with not putting a date on it, it doesn't mean it's going to get lost. But is there any other discussion on this, Ralph?
So Marilyn, the reason I didn't set a specific date on it is because I don't know what my time frame is going to be in the next couple of weeks. I'd like to go to this seminar. I'd like to put some of my thoughts together and get it out to the other counselors and all. And truthfully, I can explain later, but there's certain things happening. So I really didn't want it for the next meeting. And, that's why I just wanted to leave it a little bit open for right now.
That's absolutely fine. I just didn't want it to get lost because we've had situations where our town manager has been not addressed properly in a meeting, and I haven't been addressed properly in a meeting, and we've been, the recipients of emails that are just not appropriate for council discussion, and we need to not lose sight of that. So thank you. We'll do it soon.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike. I want to repeat that I see a major difference between communications protocol, that is what the rights are of the town councilors versus the town department heads, and the town councilors versus the council president, and the council president's responses with the town manager versus a conduct protocol, which is the how. And the what and the how are really two different things. The thing that Kathy is talking about, the presentation she's talking about, is a code of conduct. Our problems really are much less, I think, a code of conduct than they are the basic, what are the rights and duties of each party, department heads, counselors, council president, and manager. So I would like to see them split. And that's why I think we need a longer time frame to look at it, so we can write a communications protocol and a code of conduct protocol if that's necessary. Thank you.
Welcome. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Thank you. Obviously, we finished the next item on the agenda when we came out of order. There is no executive session scheduled. I started mentioning what we'll be doing on the 23rd. There will be a council meeting, and right now it seems to be shaping up that that council meeting will be pertaining to charter review, which could be a lengthy meeting, to say the least. We will have a council meeting on the 30th as well, as we approach the draft of our budget deadline, which is due out, as you all know, on April 1. I think pushing that out extends a little bit of latitude that, I've spoken to Mary about it, and, part of our issue with the budget is, I believe there's a minimum of 5 new department heads that are doing a budget for the first time. So having that extra week to prepare a budget for the first time for our town will definitely enhance the situation. I did want to thank Jamie for all the conversions of panelists to, or attendees to panelists, and everyone's help with tonight's meeting. It has been 3 hours plus. That being said, it is 9:08, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Marilyn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you all again. It's 9:08, and we are adjourned. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.